Hello and welcome to this Milky Way post-processing tutorial using Lightroom CC and Photoshop CC. This is Jay Halyarina, and today I will be giving you a peek into my workflow on how I edit my Milky Way shots. So to begin with, we are now here in Lightroom under the Develop module, and this is the shot that I'm going to use as an example for this particular workflow. Okay, and just the background on this shot, this is a photograph of the Milky Way, and you can see here Tayid Lighthouse from the town of Mahatao in Batanes. This was taken with a Canon 5D SR with a 1635 f2.8 Mark II lens, and the settings are 30 seconds at f2.8 ISO 1600. Okay, first things first, when you are now in the develop module, let's just hide that. Okay? First is change the profile from Adobe Color to camera landscape. Okay? Then go to the bottom and look for the lens corrections module. In the profile tab, click on remove chromatic aberrations and click on enable profile corrections. Okay, so Lightroom will read your files EXIF and will determine the amount of corrections in terms of distortion correction and light fall of correction according to the lens that you use. Okay, so that's all automatic. Next, go up. The first thing that I usually do is I bump up the exposure. So I'm gonna add 2 full stops of exposure. I'm not just gonna evaluate that if that's too much. So to my eye, I think that's a bit too much. So I'm gonna reduce that probably to 1.5. Okay, there you go. And then I'm just gonna add a little bit of shadows. Okay. So I'm just looking at this and really not following any specific math or figures. I'm just eyeballing it. And what I'm truly concerned here is to just bring up the exposure so more of the Milky Way is revealed. Okay. The next thing that I will do is select a white balance that approximates the look that I'm going for. So from the 3300 Kelvin and plus 2 tint, I'm just gonna put tint to 0. And then I'm just gonna add to the Kelvin values just to make things a little bit warmer, but not too much. So 3500 looks good for me at this point. Okay. Next thing I'm going to do is to go down to the HSL tab, and I'm just going to kill a bit of the magenta in terms of saturation and a lot of the purples. And then I'm going to just add a little blues. All right. So that's usually what I do. The more heavy-handed saturation will come later in Photoshop. Next thing is I'm going to do my sharpening. So under the detail tab, I'm just gonna turn off sharpening, the amount to 0. So I'm gonna zoom in to the shot. Just click on any part of the image. So you're zooming in at 100%. Okay. Okay. So the first thing is I'm just going to put color under noise reduction, the color slider, all the way to 0. So you can see a lot of the color noise was revealed. So I'm just gonna push this up in increments of 10, done by pressing the Shift key together with the up arrow key on your keyboard. So plus 10, and you can see a bit of the color noise disappeared. So I'm just gonna add one more. Good, and probably one more. So 30 is a good value under color noise. And then I'm going to do a little bit of luminance noise reduction. So it's gonna do the same thing, Shift plus up arrow key. All right. Okay, so the key here is to just eliminate some of that noise without really wrecking the texture of the photo. So for this image, it's somewhere between 20 and 30. Probably going to split the difference and go for 25. And so 25. So there's still some noise, but we'll deal with that later. Okay, next is I'm going to sharpen my photo. So go to sharpening enter these amounts. 50 for amount, radius is kept at 1.0, detail at 35, and then I will use the auto mask function. Just click on the masking slider and together with the Alt key or the Option key and slide that until you mask out all the dark area. So you basically just want to sharpen the edges. You don't want sharpening applied on the dark zones or dark spaces because that's where the noise resides. Okay, so somewhere along like this. Okay, that's good. That's it. So this is all that I do in Lightroom for Milky Way shots. So the next step is to go to Photoshop by going to Photo, Edit in Photoshop CC. Okay, so we are now here in Photoshop, and the first thing that I usually do for Milky Way shots is to go to Filter, Nick Collection, Color Effects Pro. Now, just a note, so as of today, May 2018, Nick Collection for both Windows and Mac versions of Photoshop is still free for download from the DxO site. So try to download it because it's a very, very powerful, very useful plugin. So again, upon opening in Photoshop, I just go to Filter, Nick Collection, Color Effects Pro. We are now in Color Effects Pro, the plugin. Okay, Color Effects Pro, if you're not familiar, has so many filters, and it's a lot of photographers use this plugin. And first thing that we're going to do is to add tonal contrast to bring out the Milky Way in our shot. Okay, so this is now the tonal contrast filter activated, but we're not going to use these values. But before we tweak the highlights, midtones, and other sliders, I will just put a control point because I want to limit the tonal contrast filter on just the Milky Way. So you can see here under Color Effects Pro, you have there's this dot with the plus sign and another dot with the minus sign. So obviously, if you use this control, this is called the control point, you can set where color effects, that filter you're using will have its effect. So I'm just putting dots along the Milky Way. Okay? The dots with the plus. And minus dots on areas where I don't want this effect to have or to show. Okay? So basically, ganun lang. Okay. So next, I'm just going to turn this to, I'm just gonna put all these values to 0 first. Highlights, midtones, shadows, and the saturation. And the first slider that I would usually tweak is the midtones, and I'll bring that all the way up to 50. Okay. And then shadows, maybe all the way 20 or 30. Too much. So, balik ako on 20. You can see the before and after. Bawasan ko pa yung shadows to 10. Maybe midtones down to 40. So this is really up to you guys how dramatic you want your Milky Way to appear. Okay, balik to 45 and 15. Okay. All right, that's good. The next thing that I would do is to use another filter. So I click on Add Filter here, and then I will look for brilliance and warmth. Okay, so this is basically for boosting the colors of your image. Again, I will just use control points to limit the effect to the Milky Way. Okay. By the way, guys, I'm using this minus control point to protect these images or protect these areas from the saturation boost that I'm going to do. By the way, guys, if you click on a control point, you can also control the opacity of the effect as well as the radius of the effect. So, yan. Medyo constrained talaga natin sa Milky Way itong effect na to. Alright. So, under brilliance and warmth, when you have placed the control points, just Usually add a minimal boost in the saturation, maybe to 10, and really use the perceptual saturation slider. Basically, what this does is it widens the separation between the cool and warm colors. So there you go. So this slider has the effect of bringing out the warm colors of the gaseous gassy part of the Milky Way. So you can see with that, I was able to not only add pa tayo ng konti sa saturation. With that, I was not only able to bring out the texture of the Milky Way, but also reveal its color. So this is the compare button is the before and after of all the effects that we did in Color Effects Pro. Okay, so that's good. Last filter that I'm going to use is I'm just going to add a vignetting around the photo. So I'm gonna do that by using the darken, lighten, center. So darken, lighten, center, I'm just going to use this button, the play center. So I'm gonna put the center here somewhere near the top of the lighthouse. And then I'm going to change the shape from squarish to elliptical. And I'm not gonna brighten the center for now, or maybe a little bit. Yeah, plus 10. And then I'm going to just darken the corners and then make the center or the center size smaller. Okay, so let's brighten the center now. And so as you can see, that kind of focused the attention on the Milky Way itself. That's good. So I just click on OK. As you can see here, Nik Color Effects place the filter effects on a separate layer so we can see the before and after. So let's combine that. Go to Layer, Flatten Image to combine the layers. So we're almost done here. And from this point on, this is actually good enough to be shared online. But for me, I'm just going to do a few more tweaks into this image. First thing is I'm going to run a noise reduction using a plugin that I use, my favorite noise reduction plugin, ImageNomic Noiseware. So I'm just going to run a very general noise reduction default settings since we just did a very minimal noise reduction in Lightroom. So default settings, just remember to turn the in the detail enhancement box of Noiseware, turn the sharpening to 0 and contrast to 0. Okay, so click on OK. So okay, the noise reduction is already in place. The next thing that I would do is to just tweak the color balance a little. So add a adjustment layer, color balance adjustment layer. And first under midtones, let's just put a little blues, maybe 5. And under shadows, also the same, add a little blues. Okay. And then make sure to change this from normal to color. Ayan. So there's a bit of a blue already in the sky, which looks pretty normal to me. Okay, so again, I'm flattening or merging down the layers. You can use Command E to merge down or layer flatten. The next thing I'm going to do is, this is optional guys, is to use luminosity masking just to really crush the shadows for this side of the lighthouse as well as the foreground here. I'm going to use Tony Kuiper's Rapid Luminosity Mask panel, which is free. Just go to his website, check it out. Okay, so I'm just going to generate the masks first and then probably use a darks 2 mask to get the effect that I want. Okay, so once the image turns to black and white, you know that the initial mask has been generated, but I'm not going to use this. I'm going to use the darks 2 mask. So I'm going to give it time to generate that mask. Okay, so for those who are familiar with luminosity masking, you know that areas in white are where your desired effect will be revealed, while areas in dark or black are masked out, so it won't receive the effect. So for this, I'm going to use the curves adjustment layer. So I'm just going to add a curves adjustment layer, and the darks mask will be automatically applied. All right, so I'm just going to just use the, how do you call this, the finger drag tool and just click on this area here and drag it down to darken it. Yay, that's good. Okay, and to restrain the effect further to just this side of the lighthouse and the foreground, I'm going to use a gradient tool, black over white, okay, linear gradient, and just click from here downward. All right, so before, after, all right, that's it. Okay, finally, I'm just going to flatten the image. Okay, so after this image has been flattened, we can now save it as our master edited file in TIFF format, full resolution. But if you want to share your image to Facebook, for example, we have to resize it. And for that, I'm going to use the chasing light actions, which we give out to alumni of our workshops. Okay, I'm gonna have to crop this image first just to focus on the Milky Way. I'm going to use a standard 3:2 crop ratio. Okay, so okay. So after cropping, I'm now going to run the action to resize it for web. Usually Facebook suggests a 1200 pixels, so I'm just gonna run that action, so which also converts the image from 16-bit to 8-bit, which allows me to save it in JPEG. So that's it. Command Alt 0, so actual size. So I'm just, again, this is the sharpening layer, just gonna flatten that, and that's it. Thank you very much for watching this tutorial. I hope you learned something, and until next time, folks, maraming salamat at magandang araw po sa inyong lahat. Yay!